Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I wanted to discuss the relationship between limerence and loneliness. And I don't just mean like the experience emotionally of loneliness, but I mean like what it feels like and means to be lonely, and really break this down into a little bit more detail so you can start understanding sort of the cause and effect of the relationship with limerence. So if you're not already familiar with what limerence is essentially extreme infatuation. So infatuation that basically becomes destabilizing and has negative consequences to your life. Limerence can happen when somebody's in a relationship with somebody, but it can also happen when somebody's not in a relationship. People can fall into limerence with television characters or movie stars or people they've never met. People can fall into limerence after one date with somebody and when they're not even in some sort of committed relationship. And you can think of this infatuation as being something that's almost so seductive in its own way to the person experiencing it that it can actually go so far as to disrupt sleep patterns. It can disrupt somebody's eating habits. And oftentimes you'll see somebody in limerence be in fantasy in their mind all day. So they're spending so much time throughout the course of their day fantasizing about a person, the future, what's going on, all the things they're going to do with this person, all the places they'll travel to, all the things they'll explore. And they really, in a sense, get addicted to the neurochemistry of the fantasy of the person. In other words, when you're thinking about this person and you're imagining all of these bonding activities that you're going to take part in, deep imagination can actually elicit neurochemical responses. So you may have oxytocin, the bonding neurochemical, or serotonin, or dopamine, or the infatuation neurochemical, phenylethylamine. So you may see all these different things take place as a result of that. And it can actually make the fantasizing about somebody quite addictive. Now, the really interesting thing about this and why this sort of relates back to loneliness is because we fall into limerence with people in a reasonable correlation with how much we feel in a sense of learned helplessness to be in a relationship to ourselves. And a lot of people will say like, well, what does it mean to be in a relationship to yourself? And I know like it sort of sounds like the surface level thing, but I want you to imagine that you're dating somebody and you're getting to know them. What is the process of dating to falling in love? Well, you have to get to know the person. You have to ask them deep questions. You have to get to know what their likes and dislikes are and your similarities to them and your differences. And you have to actually take the time to introspect about that person, essentially, right? So if we were to flip that around, that would be introspecting in the relationship to ourselves. Because you can't really like somebody and enjoy somebody's company when you don't know them at all. And in the case of limerence, what's essentially happening is somebody is projecting. You meet somebody for the first time, and usually a couple things are really standing out to you about that person. It can be different qualities or characteristics they have, or it can be different needs that they seem to hold the promise of meeting in your life. In other words, you may sit down and you may have one experience on a date with that person and see that they're very present and they make you feel very seen. Maybe they validate something about you and they make you feel really understood. Maybe, you see them as very attractive. And so you put them on this pedestal and think that that represents, if they're interested in you, it meets your need for significance in some way or to feel special or important. So there can be all these different, I'm just listing a bunch off the top of my head that are common for people, but there are so many reasons that somebody can fall into limerence with somebody. But how this sort of, again, relates back to loneliness is that where you are in limerence represents needs that are unmet in the relationship to yourself, and places where you feel like you are not able to express traits that somebody else is expressing in the relationship to you. And so the more somebody doesn't know themselves, hasn't taken the time to introspect about themselves, hasn't taken the time to really know what their needs are, to know who they want to be in the world and what traits they want to really harvest for that and express, when they don't have like a mission and a vision and a purpose for their life and haven't taken the opportunity to really get to know themselves at that level, then what happens is somebody comes along and they meet a need in your life that you are in a sense of learned helplessness around. So maybe they make you feel really seen when you're not seeing yourself and your own needs and your own boundaries. And so we attach as strongly and deeply as we can at a subconscious level to the things that are missing from our lives. It's part of the subconscious mind's function. It's trying to create homeostasis and equilibrium by fulfilling what feels to be missing. And so you'll see these dynamics of when somebody's in limerence, there's this really strong correlation between that person who often falls into limerence with others also being somebody who leaves themselves lonely. In other words, like they're out of relationships themselves. They're constantly, maybe you're with yourself, like you're spending time alone, but it doesn't mean that by spending time alone, you're spending time with yourself, if that makes sense. Like you can be spending time alone, but you're like watching a television show, you're watching reruns of something over and over again. You are avoiding yourself all the time you're alone, right? So being alone doesn't constitute as being with yourself. Being with yourself looks like taking the time to, go through personal growth questions in relationship to self, figuring out who you are and what your boundaries are in relationships, figuring out what your needs are, thinking about what you want your future to be and what's important to you going forward in the future. Evaluating your relationships in your life to see if you're happy. And if not, what could you do differently to promote more happiness and well-being in your life? Being with yourself means taking quality time with yourself to figure out who you are and where you're at and where you want to be going forward. And so what you'll see here is when we are avoiding ourselves, we are so much more likely to fall into limerence with others, where we have this destabilizing infatuation because we are in this space in relationship to self where we are not meeting our own needs. And so when somebody comes along outside of us and seems to have the opportunity to do so, or that they might do so, we attach so profoundly to that concept or idea, and we get addicted to fantasizing about that person. We get addicted in a way to the neurochemistry of fantasy. And it's in a way meeting a need indirectly for us to be in that position, but it's keeping us disconnected from reality in a sense, because we're not here in our body, in our lives, rooted, grounded, being able to show up for ourselves and create true fulfilling connections in that present moment. And so it's really important, if you haven't already done a deep dive into limerence and found some kind of harmony. Like infatuation is not bad. Infatuation will be an exciting part of a relationship, and it's a normal stage for securely attached people. But infatuation and limerence, limerence is something that can ultimately really destroy other areas of your life because you're not present at work, or you go into impulse buying and spend all your money, or you're not thinking about the consequences of your actions because you're so disconnected from being present with yourself and in your world. So anyways, those two things are correlated. Basically wanted to talk about that. And if you want to do a deep dive into this topic, we have a whole course all about limerence and overcoming it. You can check it out for free for 7 days using the link below. And it will take you through how to recondition limerence so that you can bring that into a more healthy, stable infatuation, and also empower the relationship to yourself by understanding your own needs, who you are from the inside out, and what to execute on going forward in your life. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.